it a couple minutes. Nikki's going to be my checker to see if everything's working properly. All right. Looks like it's up on my end. Is it up on your end? Sound good? Check 1, 2. Does it sound good? Sound good? All right. All right, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to mattnews.biz, the podcast where I share my thoughts, opinions, and beliefs that have been lovingly dubbed Matt News. This episode is brought to you unofficially by Restream. Restream is the best way to live stream to YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and 30-plus streaming sites all at once. Expand your audience with multi-streaming today at Restream.com. Tonight, it's red versus blue. It's Republican versus Democrat. Sitting president versus former vice president. Tonight is the first presidential debate between Donald J. Trump and Joe Biden. And joining me to watch this battle of the Titans is editor-in-chief of No King but Christ, Adam Graham. Adam, thank you for joining me tonight.
I'm an editor, huh?
Yeah, well, I was trying to build everying up, and so I was just like, I'm just going to build it up, build it up.
Illustrious title, yeah.
Editor,
throw a couple of founder, president,
treasurer,
secretary.
Now we do have some other friends who are doing their own live stream. We have like our buddies at Make Liberty Great Again. They have their own live stream going as well. They might be a little bit more on the comical end than we're going to be. You know, I do want us to, it doesn't start until 9, but I wanted to go ahead and start and talk to you a little bit about what are kind of your expectations for this presidential debate.
That's a little tough. I mean, like we were discussing before, I expect to be underwhelmed or infuriated. I can't quite remember previous cycles. Does it, or what the current schedule is? So it seems as though there would have been a number of debates already, but they haven't happened. I presume that's because of COVID or something, or is this normally when they would start? Are there more than this scheduled, or is it just this one basically?
No, there are more scheduled. Hold on, I'm actually looking it up right now.
Do we know if it's targeted to a particular set of topics, or is it like a general?
This one I think is general. I don't know. This one, I believe the moderator is the one who chooses the questions. So it's going to be really up to him what he focuses on. There's a lot of speculation on what he's going to focus on. A lot of people think it's going to be focused on the president's response to COVID, and I'm actually thinking that Black Lives Matter is going to be brought up among a few other things. But it's going to be that kind of. I think it's going to be that kind of situation. I think it's going to be a lot of name calling.
Yeah, it's a little tough. So, I mean, it's been a while, obviously, since we've seen presidential debates, and I've usually gotten my reviews secondhand,
right,
through Tom Woods and Lou Rockwell. Those are usually the really nice rundowns of these sorts of debates, and they would do that for the original presidential debates.
Yeah,
I do assume that that one thing you may see if previously, now I don't exactly think Biden was running a hard left, campaign tack during the primary debates. But in so much as he did, I would assume he may move to the middle. It's assumed and kind of been seen in the past, right, that that during primaries and leading up to nominations, candidates will typically run a more extreme, more hard, whatever, direction or whatever side of the spectrum, that they'll run more to a more radical end of whatever issues they're campaigning on. And then once they win, it's basically a run to the middle to try to capture as many votes as possible, right? I mean, the interesting thing that that I was thinking of earlier, and I'm sure you have an opinion on this. Do we really think many people are going to be coming to this debate being undecided or having some sort of? I feel like this is one of the more polarizing sets of candidates, right? I mean, you've got an incumbent that's just hated by a certain segment of the population and has been for years now. I mean, it's been pretty steady. And then Um, s- Someone who is, I mean, he's not at all the opposite, but in many ways, he's like the, I don't know, I mean, he's the more respectable version of the other one for the other party. It seems to me that it's hard. I would think it would be hard if I was seriously trying to consider one or the other, that you wouldn't have already come to an opinion. I mean, it's kind of hard to be middle ground in these, it would seem to me.
As far as this election goes, yeah, I think so. I think this election is actually more, so far, is more polarizing than 2016. You know?
Yeah, I mean, you could see yourself. I don't know if a lot of people had strong opinions, against Mitt Romney or something, right?
Right.
This kind of all around guy, or what I would imagine, at least for the initial, Bush, W. Bush, election, that people could, I could see myself voting for these guys. I mean, these are a lot of times, considered to be mealy mouth type of politicians, right? So they know the game. I mean, Biden obviously knows how to compose himself, assuming he's been in
office for 180 years or so, right?
So long or something, right? But it would just seem to me that I really can't imagine, and that's probably the case to some extent with every first-term president, right? Either they have, they've given people reason to either support them or not, and it certainly would seem to be, if you were susceptible to peer pressure,
right,
that you might not be someone who would want to, openly support Donald Trump. But I'm just not sure that are people really going to come to this debate thinking, I don't know the candidates stand on this particular issue. Frankly, I haven't heard much of discussion of issues, period, in this campaign.
That's what I was actually discussing this with somebody today, and that's what I told them, because they're kind of hard on, like, I'm gonna vote Biden, and I was like, why? Because he's not Trump. And they were like, oh no, there's more than that. And then we didn't really get into the issues, but like I haven't really heard the issues, but apparently Biden has laid them out, on many times, but I haven't seen that. Maybe my algorithms are a little biased. I don't think so. I think I have a pretty wide range that goes through my, my Google and everything like that, what I look up and what I don't look up. But like, I haven't heard either candidate personally talk about any issues that I don't care about,
Yeah, and wasn't it? I don't know where I'm remembering this, but was it one of the parties that basically didn't even put out a platform? Almost, they didn't even vote on a party platform. I can't recall if it was like the Republican Party didn't even bother.
It was probably the Republicans, because I think the DNC, when they had their.
Yeah, I don't know. I do recall reading through Trump's published set of priorities, right? For the next, I guess that could be considered a platform, but that's never been the case before, right? The point in general, when you're doing these platform committees, right, and during the conventions, is basically, this is what it's a party wide sort of adopted platform, right? And the presumption is that the candidate fulfills that platform, or at the very least, is someone who can serve as a figurehead for the furthering of that platform. And as I understand it, I don't know if this was before, more than a century ago, but as far as I'm aware, it used to be the platform was paramount. It was the highest importance, because it basically enshrined what the party was for. Right. And I'm not terribly sure that the Republican Party has an identity right now other than just whatever Donald Trump is, whatever it supports at the time.
Yeah. And that's even if we're wrong and they do have a platform, that's the way it feels, at least, is that whatever kind of Donald Trump wants. Where I feel like the other side, the Democrats, are almost opposite. It's Biden pretty much is going to do whatever the DNC wants, and I think that a lot of people know that's what he's going to do. He's going to kind of go the route that he's wanted to go.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the inside baseball from him,
Me,
but
me either. Me either. I'm talking a lot from speculation and what I have seen.
yeah, I get I have a feeling as
Hmm.
though, especially if he's not particularly strong, personally driven by, certain issues. And
Right.
I'm not sure he is. What has he not accomplished that he set out to accomplish over the number of decades he was out? Um, if he is not, strong, and if he
Hmm.
is not a strong presence, then I imagine what you're going to get, I'd be afraid of what we were going to get, is
Hmm.
another George W. Bush, in that he would amass the sort of what we often refer to as deep state sort of audience around him in
Mm.
all the positions that matter and are not elected, right? So, you will get partisans, you will get, hyper targeted interests in cabinet positions, in deputy, chairs of, National Security Council and the economic, councils that surround, these just Washington in general, and you'll get kind of a Dick Cheney sort of effect, right, where people are able to just kind of run their department and run their programs the way they want to.
Hmm.
And as long as you can kind of assure them, that you're not going to completely ruin someone's reputation, they get what they want. And
Yeah.
I obviously don't trust, in so much as I don't trust either one of these candidates, I don't trust their unelected, probably corporate, appointees. I
Yeah.
trust them even less, right?
Right. So we're going to be watching from C-SPAN. I was already talking to you about this, Adam. But we're going to watch from C-SPAN because I feel that C-SPAN is probably going to be the less. They're not going to have as much commentary as some of the other, like ABC, Fox, and NBC, and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that no pundits will talk like over us.
Yeah, there's only room for 2 pundits on this live stream.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the things I do want to do, as I was thinking about how am I going to do this earlier, and I'm wondering, like, am I going to pause it, and let us talk a little bit, or am I going to just, because I'm sure they're going to take commercial breaks, so I guess we could talk during the commercial breaks, or we can just mute it for a little bit, talk a little bit, and then come back to it. However we kind of, however it goes. I'm hoping that they're going to have commercial breaks and then come back to it.
Yeah, sure. I wonder if we want to. Maybe you have a chance to do that. But I did print out my bingo card, so I don't know. If
I
you
didn't
want
print
to
out
put
my
it out
bingo
there.
card. I didn't print out my bingo card. I'm just going to kind of.
Way to do it, buddy. How are we going to mark the one? You got a picture. And
Yeah, I know.
I did print out my Babylon Bee bingo card. And,
so that's our only gimmick that we're going to do tonight. Is Babylon Bee came out with the was it follow tonight's debate with the Babylon Bee's handy bingo card. And so there's multiple cards on here. You can just go to the Babylon Bee and check it out. And we're gonna go through these. But like one has a huge China virus is one. Dog faced pony soldier. I don't think he's gonna say that. Or I don't think anybody's gonna. A lot of these you're kind of like, I hope none of these come up. But drug test is one of them. Some of these are kind of like, I'm like, wow, Babylon Bee, these are kind of offensive.
Well, the sad thing is that presumably all of these are things that they have said or done in other company, and actually got wrong.
Yeah. All right. Well,
yeah, I'm not sure who that's. I'm not sure who that is.
Let's see this late. What's she saying?
We thank you with all our hearts. In 1987, Paul Kirk and Frank Fahrenkopf co-founded the CPD. I'd like to introduce the co-chair, Frank Fahrenkopf, and his colleague are also our co-chair, Ken Wallach, to start this part of the program.
Well, it definitely doesn't seem like a worthwhile part of the program.
No, it just looks like it's, whatever. I also hope they don't.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
This is like that.
Welcome to the.
This is the pandering section. This is like, hey, this is everybody who paid for this
Western
program.
Reserve and the Cleveland Clinic.
So if you're,
if you have not had the opportunity yet to go around and see this fantastic.
This is like. So I don't know how many of you are how many of either you or anyone watching here has gone to like school presentations, right? So if you go to like the end of the year graduation, or a drama performance, or even like an athletic award ceremony or something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is the part where all the teachers in the audience have to stand up, right? And the
Yeah.
principal and the superintendent, and they all get recognized individually. And then it's the mayor and the local everybody's got to have their moment, because this is what
Yeah.
makes them important. This involvement in politics here, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm wondering though. I'm wondering because like the thing is like I've watched a few presidential debates, but I've never like watched the whole thing with intent. And so I'm actually wondering if they're kind of going over rules and what the issues they're going to be talking about.
Well, hey, I mean, feel free. We can listen
throughout the rest of the term of these debates. So we have a great shout out for United Airlines. Anheuser-Busch has been with us for 28 years, as has the firm of Crowell and Mooring in Washington, D.C. Also, special thanks to some people in the network business, in the journalism business, Pentagram, CBS News Radio, and Intercom Communications. In the hotel behind us, the Intercontinental, there's a tremendously large room, which is called the Media Filing Center.
Are they in San Francisco? Do you know where they are?
I don't know.
We usually have 3,000 to 5,000.
They're in Cleveland.
In the Media Filing Center. And so with...
Yeah, so again, we're watching C-SPAN. I hope they don't take this down for copyright or anything like that, because it's a presidential debate. And we're also commentating on it as well. So I'm hoping it's it'll be okay under fair use.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I don't know.
Yeah, so hopefully we won't get zucked.
C-SPAN would have to have their own, rights management on it. I'm not sure
that's
true.
That's true.
Their thing.
Yeah. And that's another reason why I picked C-SPAN, is because I was like, they're probably not going to be very, very commentatory or anything like that. They're just going to present it the way it's going to be presented, which I'm kind of happy for, because I really don't want to hear what other people have to think, because it's going to be it's going to be very, like you said, it's going to be very polarized. It's going to be very much, this is what the president said, and this is why it's good, and Joe Biden is has dementia and all this kind of stuff like that. And then the other side is going to be like, oh, he's a megalomaniac. Trump is a megalomaniac, and he's literally Hitler. So we'll hear all that. Yeah. So, is there anything else that you expect? I did post an article earlier about like the 5 things to expect. What do you kind of hope that they talk about? Or actually, you know what? Let me go with this question. As libertarians, what would even remotely make us consider voting for one of these presidents?
Yeah, probably nothing. But however, let me think. If, for instance, Biden was to completely swear off his previous involvement with criminal justice, I would say reform, but it was a poor reform, I suppose. His entire criminal justice history, and say it was all a mistake, and that he wanted to completely reform the justice system to take on, qualified immunity, or mandatory minimum sentencing, or reschedule narcotics and that sort of thing. It would be, and understand from a Christian libertarian perspective, I don't have to be for those things.
Right.
But I also recognize, and hopefully in that case he would recognize, that how harmful the political solution to those problems has been, in spite of the intent that was behind them. And, maybe if Kamala Harris was then to, tweet that she totally agreed, and that their entire administration would be rolling all that back, that might make it a tiny bit hard for me not to vote for that. It kind of reminds me about the time when, so I'm a little bit more into the, into some foreign policy circles and that sort of thing.
Right.
So that'll obviously be something I'd be interested to hear on this as well. But there were some, people who would consider themselves libertarian and might otherwise agree with, say, some Republican politicians on economic matters or some domestic matters, right? At least, they talk as though they do. And yet they voted for Obama either the first or the second time for the sole reason that they thought foreign policy was so important and that he would have somewhat of a different approach. And I mean, frankly, it's probably hard not to be as bad or as problematic on that as Bush. So anything would almost be an improvement. But over McCain, they were presuming that that Obama had to be better on it than any other alternative. And so if we're just talking about like a particular issue and just hedging our bets with what candidate might do something that was important enough of a change. That on the whole, that would somehow lead to long-lasting positive impacts, then that's basically the only thing that would swing me right. I'm expecting that nothing that either of them are going to say. Frankly, it's so difficult for me to ever really believe anything that's said because, of course, no one is held accountable to what they say in these.
Right.
Ultimately, and additionally, they hardly even make these decisions themselves to begin with. These things are issued out to experts or people in their respective fields. So it's just as much as the president, their position and their platform matters, it ends up not mattering. Things happen the way they say anyway. So, but I mean that would be an example, perhaps, right?
Right. So it looks like they're going to get started here in about 12 minutes or so. I do want to open it up for anybody who's watching the stream, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or even Twitch. If you want to make a comment, because I understand that there's probably going to be more comments than actual questions. But if you want to make a comment or anything like that, feel free to do so on the chat. And if your comment is good enough to make it onto the stream, I will pop it up and we'll be able to see it and read it. And maybe if there's a call to respond or anything like that, we'll respond to those as well. So feel free to do that wherever you're watching, whatever comment section or chat, whatever. Feel free to do that during the stream. This is supposed to go until 10:30. So that's when I was kind of planning on us, unless it starts feeling super duper repetitive and it's been, over an hour,
Oh, yeah.
So I have no clue who these people are.
It's my pleasure to welcome you to the city of Cleveland.
Oh,
Tonight, you join us in the beautiful Sensen Pavilion
on the mayor. They
of
bring
the Health
on the
Education
clinic president.
Cleveland Clinic.
we want
share
to
this,
thank our
campus
gracious
with our
sponsors
partners
tonight.
From Case Western Reserve University. This building is very special to us. It was opened just a year ago as a place for students, medical, nursing, and dental, to begin their professional journeys.
Yeah, I can't sit there and listen to that right now. It's like you just kind of want to get to the show. Do you want to listen to that? My wife is watching the live stream. She wants to listen to it, but you are listening. She's watching C-SPAN's coverage of it. All right, let me know if they start to say anything important. So, when's the last time you watched a presidential debate, Adam?
I don't know if I've watched them in a decade, but my wife occasionally would listen to one or something, and so I would catch some on the background, and this was years ago. I mean, we were married in 2012, so right there when Romney was coming through, and then funny enough, Virginia had a decent they have their governor cycle every it's basically the year after, so it was kind of that period in there was a little bit of a political awakening for me. I was generally just kind of conservative in the broad sense, and so I wouldn't have said I supported Romney as some kind of on principle or something, but just obviously from the the alternatives or something at hand,
right.
I was just making a judgment call at the time. But that is definitely where I then started actually looking into the philosophy behind these things. So into economics and capitalism, and then some political philosophy and that sort of thing. Kind of that era where you move from having any awareness, and then you move into one, and then you find the more woke elements of it, and finally get into that. So it's definitely it's a search, but that may be the last time I really remember, other than again listening to kind of those reviews that Woods or Scott Horton would do, or Lou Rockwell will do, and kind of catching them through osmosis and by way of a second party, kind of distilling it through that. So I mean, it just really hasn't ultimately mattered when you understand your principles well enough, and then when you understand that no major party candidate supports them, it makes it a little easier to parse these things.
Yeah, because whenever I discuss these presidential matters and about that, and even when I'm discussing the current candidates that we have, I find myself at a loss for words when they bring up like certain particular policies that they are promising about that, because I don't know them. And it's because I feel like I have principles that I'm set with, and I'm like, this is the candidate would literally have to do most of what I believe for them to even be viable for me to choose. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my stuff has to do with just kind of deregulation and leaving people alone. Also foreign policy is kind of like, of course people would say, well, you're just an isolationist, but it's like, no, I just think we need to handle our own matters. We're not doing our own matters well enough that we should be the world police. And then we really don't have any reason to be out there doing those types of things. And so, I feel the same way. Like I feel like I'm more principled. And so even if somebody were to ask me a question about some kind of political policy, I can answer it from a principled standpoint, and not necessarily have to go through a myriad of facts and things like that.
Yeah, I guess they're you see family and friends coming in with their masks.
Yeah, with their masks on. Yeah,
it feels a little bit like Judge Judy or something like that, doesn't it? Here comes the look at them all, social distance and everything.
Yeah, the thing is they don't look 6 feet apart, but I don't know if that's not necessary, or maybe they are 6 feet apart.
Who knows?
There's camera tricks where you can. Because I did it actually. I filmed a class one time, and we only had like 6 people, and they wanted the room to feel full. Mm-hmm. And so, here's Chris Wallace here. Yeah, he's going to be the moderator tonight. So
great. They only got a few more minutes.
Oh, their audio's not on? Okay, so he's talking to the crowd. It's very secretive.
Interesting. Well, I do generally know what to expect from this, and it's unfortunate because, as you would guess, I wouldn't say either of us probably have a plan to support either one of these candidates.
Yeah, I don't. If I were to lean any direction between these two, because I do recognize that there's more than just these two candidates. But if I were to lean between one of these two, I would say I'd lean Trump. However, it's only because so far I don't see anything fit about Biden. I've been told a few times today that I'm wrong about that, and I said, well, I'll see in the debate, because if in the debate we see that Biden is coherent, and can make and really does support his own opinions and his own platform well, then I can say, well, I was wrong. However, I don't feel confident about that. And we'll see.
And it really primarily be out of self-protection, right? I mean, if I'm thinking that someone's going to obviously come into power and then, raise my tax rates and pass policies that make it more difficult to thrive and actually raise my family and that sort of thing, then obviously it's kind of tough to do. I mean, I didn't vote for either one of them last time.
Right.
I will put it like that. But I was saying I do generally know what to expect out of these people. I do expect them to not actually care about property rights, either of them.
Right.
Real property rights. I don't expect them to care about liberty. Mm-hmm. I expect them to just have their current, popular opinions. And unfortunately, half the issues that they even come close to being right on, they still have something that is necessary to object to, because they just, it seems like even when they have an inkling of good instinct in a particular area, they still don't follow through in a way that is still positive as far as outcomes go. So.
Yeah, or at least is satisfactory.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hold on a second. Let's see if is audio. There's still no
Turn the
audio there?
on. Or...
Oh. You would think they would. Oh, now it's on. So he's being very secretive with the audience.
It's going to be interesting to hear how much, if any, I do recall that there were a number of cases where, in prior debates, the moderators seemed to be pretty leading, and made it pretty clear where they were coming from, and very much not impartial.
Yeah,
so
I'm
it'll
wondering.
Be interesting to see if this is one of those.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, because Chris Wallace is Fox, right?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't.
Oh.
Unless they had Tucker Carlson on here, I don't know where who these people go into.
What?
Yes, I know you got.
Oh, my wife is telling me I need to think before I speak. So.
Is that?
Yeah. Hey Jennifer,
yes.
so this is my friend Jennifer here, and she's saying that she's grateful for us hosting this debate because watching two guys who really don't want to watch it is probably going to be less painful than watching it by yourself.
Yeah, I would at least need someone to do it with, and I may need alcohol by the end of it. So we will see.
I actually have a bunch of pistachios, but I don't want to sit here and crunch them, on the thing. So
yeah, so that may still be more enjoyable than hearing their voices at some point.
Yeah. So is there audio? Because I don't hear anything.
I hear it shallow.
That's true. Yeah, chattering. Everybody's chattering through their masks.
This is.
So I did hear that they're not going to shake hands. So I think this is going to be the first presidential debate where they don't shake hands, because of COVID and everything like that. But they're also not going to be wearing masks because they're distanced apart and everything. So the last debate that I actually watched was it was just a primary debate in the Republican, and it was when Trump was elected, and the only reason I watched it up until I watched the debates up until Rand kind of bowed out.
Yeah.
Then I quit watching after that because I didn't care about any of the other Republican candidates, and then put all my hope on Gary Johnson, and then he went nuts.
Yeah, they kind of remind me. They kind of remind me of Biden and Johnson together a little bit from their gaffes and things that they.
And that's the thing too is Johnson had some good platform points. I think he started going a little too left for a lot of libertarians, and so a lot of libertarians kind of was like, well, this is just a joke anyway now. But he did have some points, but his gaffes are the thing that really messed him up, not his platform, I think.
Yeah, well, and just general lack of concern from people of hearing a third opinion,
Yeah,
a third party, and to some extent, I get it. If you're bewildered by having to sort out two parties, imagine having to think about three choices. I mean, I generally understand for people who don't have a coherent political philosophy, and I don't really mean that as a negative connotation to it. I'm saying you shouldn't have to worry about politics as a person. You should just be able to live your life. But the fact is, you do, because it affects you, and
right.
It can be difficult to have to parse through.
Good
all
evening
that.
from the Health Education Campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. I'm Chris Wallace of Fox News, and I welcome you to the first of the 2020 presidential debates between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The Commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments, with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest of each segment. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the Commission or the two candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the Commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed the candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say.
That would be nice.
No noise except right now.
Yeah.
As we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump.
I'm going to try to keep my comments down until
Vice President Biden.
like breaks or anything like that.
Yeah. I don't think Biden was supposed to come out yet.
Oh, no, they were supposed to come out at the same time, I think.
Both of them?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight, why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way, In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time, even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is. And that say occurs when they vote for United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of
that since he was elected, by the way.
The Affordable Care Act.
I don't remember hearing about
which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I have nothing, I'm not opposed to the justice. She seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
All right. There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
during
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the 100 million people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy with.
simply not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist. You're going to socialist medicine.
We're now into, gentlemen, we're now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any. And one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won, were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said,
But
and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply
Your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your party wants to go socialist medicine.
My party is
and
me.
socialist
right
healthcare.
now, I am
and
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act?
Joe, you've had 308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk about
And
this.
if you were here,
Look,
it
here's
wouldn't
the
be
deal.
200. It would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You
Late
didn't
on
want
the
me to
draw.
ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban
All right, gentlemen,
Europe, which was heavily
Mr. President,
You would have been
Mr.
much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later.
Mr.
You're
President,
talking about 2 million people.
You're not going to be able
President,
to
as
shut
a
him up.
moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already
You don't know it's on the
begun.
ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is
you
it on the
said
ballot? It's not on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, would you
And you
just
don't
be quiet
know
for a
her view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't
don't
know her
know.
view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well,
I got rid of the individual mandate.
I'm going to give you an
Excuse
opportunity.
me. I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a
That
big
is not a
chunk of
comprehensive
Obamacare. That
plan.
is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst
I
part of
didn't ask
Obamacare.
Sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating
worst
him, not
part of
me.
Obamacare.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular
Mr. Vice
aspect of
President,
Obamacare.
Mr.
I got rid of it.
I'd like you
and we
to-
will
Mr.
protect people.
I'm wondering if
President,
they're
as
going to
moderator
mute his
of this
mic at some
debate,
point.
And I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer.
Go ahead.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare. And just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump health care plan?
Fine. Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something, that there's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against Big Pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care. All of the things that we've done, insulin. I give you an example, insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people. The cost, I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water, you want to know the truth. So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because they pay just a tiny fraction.
As I say, this is open discussion.
No,
let me ask you about,
this is big stuff.
Sir, you'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the Vice President, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
Well, if I can ask you the question, it will
not
end.
What your party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option, number one.
Joe, you agreed with Bernie Sanders, who's far left, on the manifesto, we call it, and that gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
I'm
not going to listen to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm here standing facing you.
Pocahontas would have left 2 days early. You would have lost every prize.
All he knows how to do is
Super Tuesday. You got very lucky.
Here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to make sure because here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just want to make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
Mr. President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd be surprised.
You picked
You'd be surprised.
the wrong guy, the wrong night at the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders to the
The
manifesto.
whole idea.
Let him.
There is no manifesto. Number
Please let
one.
him speak, Mr.
Number two.
You just lost
He's being very rude.
You just lost the left.
No.
You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan.
Folks,
absolutely
folks,
agreed
do you have any idea what
you have
this clown's
socialized,
doing?
They call it
Mr.
Do you have any
President.
socialized medicine.
Mr.
Well,
President.
I tell you what, he is not for any help for people needing health care because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two, there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give them better health care at a much lower price because
by the
Obamacare
way, he doesn't know
no
how.
good.
He doesn't know how
I've
to do
already
that.
fixed it.
He has never offered a plan.
Fixed it to an extent.
He has
Obamacare,
never done a
as you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't.
Gentlemen, you realize if you're both speaking at the same time,
and it's too expensive.
let the president go ahead, sir.
Or Chris
Obamacare
Wallace.
is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guarantee pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed that. They shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people. Okay? I said, you got to run it so well.
That's what he's
and I
known
just
for.
had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive.
Okay.
Premiums are too high, and it doesn't work. So we do want to get rid of it. Chris, we want to get rid of it.
I understand it, sir, but I have to give you roughly equal time.
Good.
Please let the Vice President talk.
Good.
He has no plan for health care.
Of course we do.
Please.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right. I have one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact, it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question.
Why wouldn't you answer that
because
question?
the question is,
the radical left.
Would you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
Who's
on your list?
Right. Gentlemen, I think
this is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the court.
We have
not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They sure
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject. So let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 5%, 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the Chinese, the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to you.
You have 2 minutes, sir.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic because you didn't think I should have closed our country. Wait a minute.
It says 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President
close the
Trump
government?
saved
Why
thousands
did he close
of
the
lives.
country?
Many of you Democrat governors said,
I thought he closed
President
travel
Trump
down.
did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you
done.
didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no
very-
economic recession.
Sir, you made a
There was
no
lethal
recession.
disease.
You made a point. Let him answer.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far
How
more
many
people.
people?
Far
That is-
more people.
And
You would have been
And by the way,
months late.
your own
You were
his
months behind me,
his
Joe.
own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up. He said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine. We're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Johnson
Fauci.
& Johnson, Pfizer?
And
Okay,
by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future because you both have touched on
Does
one of
that
the
count as,
two of the
trust
questions
science?
I'm going to ask.
Or I believe in
Focusing on the
science.
future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly
I've seen that on the other cards. I don't think it's on my
odds
card.
with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives.
God.
It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people.
I'm going to pause it just for a second, just because, like, I'm honestly thinking they're not going to take a break for a really long time, if at all.
Well, and now if you pause it, I'm not exactly sure. Like, you'll be running longer than 10:30.
We'll probably just cut it at 10:30, wherever they're at. Just a couple of things I wanted to, because and you said a couple of things were untrue, and I'm not sure if they're untrue or not. But like, what was one? Oh, the travel. I thought he instilled a travel ban at one point. Trump did.
I mean, I don't know when. I wasn't exactly holding my. The indication though that it seems like we're getting here though is that somehow Biden is blaming the recession on Trump. However, it seems as though all the progressive governors shut their economies down.
Right.
And many of the conservative governors, at least early on, they ended up doing some of those things later anyway, were the ones keeping it open. So I don't exactly see. It seems completely inconsistent.
That's
Both
one of the
them
things
seem
I wrote.
really inconsistent in what they're
Very
saying.
inconsistent. That's one of the things I wrote down here is when Biden said he shut down the economy, and I was like, no, that was the Democratic states were the ones that wanted to shut down first, and then again, you had some of the Republican ones as well. Like right now, we have in Florida, we have DeSantis finally opened up the whole government or opened up the whole economy and took away all the restrictions, even masks. Masks are no longer mandatory either in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's having a cow over it because they're saying that he's opening the state up to danger and everything like that. But the thing is he's thinking about the economy. And you have people like California right now, which they're on fire too. But they don't want to open up either, because of COVID, not necessarily because of the fires. One thing too is I liked what Trump said about how the Democrats, if they were put in the same position as with the Supreme Court justice pick, that they would do the exact same thing he does. They wouldn't give up the nominee either, and I completely agree with that, because what we saw happen in 2012 with Obama.
Sure, I don't know. I was just struck with his comment that we won, we get to make the decision. Elections have consequences. I said, well, that's democracy right there.
Yeah,
do what you're going to do. It's a political decision. It shouldn't be, but it is.
Yep, that's the thing I want. If I could,
it's the definition of democracy.
That's it. And if I could say, hey, if you take away anything from this debate, everybody, is that what Trump said? We won, so now you have to suffer the consequences. Everybody else has to suffer the consequences. And I don't.
It's not unique. I'm not saying
it's not unique. No. And that's what. That's another. And that's the other point I was going to make, is that it would be the exact same thing for the other side as well. Yeah. That because that's that's the position they would put themselves in too. Is, hey, we won the nomination. We have the presidency. We have the Senate. So now we get this nomination if they were on the same foot. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was saying. Like, I like that Trump said that, because he's right. He's right, and I think that people need to see through all the politics and stuff like that.
I mean, I don't know. Frankly, this is the first time I've heard of Obamacare in 4 years. It seems like to me, except for perhaps the leniency on the individual mandate.
Right. I didn't even know that he just signed an executive order. What did they say, 5 days ago?
I don't know, but. Where has this been? It doesn't seem like it's been a priority at all. I haven't heard congressional or senatorial candidates talking about it, or conservatives. Period. They haven't mentioned Obamacare since then. They haven't done hardly anything to roll it back at the legislative level. So I guess they're just expecting some judge to take it away or something and completely. So they can blame it on someone else for taking it away. I don't understand I thought we were repealing Obamacare. What is this, replacing it with a comprehensive plan for all these things? I don't understand. As they say, what would you replace Obamacare with? Well, what would you replace cancer with if you removed it?
Yeah.
Why would you replace it with anything? The point is to get rid of it.
Well, also to the point of what neither one of them made the point, but when Trump was talking about how, because again, his platform for 2016 was, I'm going to repeal Obamacare. But then in this debate right here, he said, I tried to get my guys, my cabinet, to work with it. Well, that's not what you promised the people. You promised the people that you were going to repeal it. So what's this talk now about? Well, we tried to work with it, and we said, hey, make it work the best you can. That wasn't the deal. That wasn't why people elected you. But I'm sure that people who are supporters of Trump are going to somehow defend that point. They're somehow going to defend it. Some of my more offhand comments was going to be Trump and his bronzer. Like, he is very orange man today.
Yeah, and it's not a terribly warm white balance on this camera feed, so I don't feel like it's just the red push on it. So
yeah. I wanted to. This is so Crystal Snyder. This is my sister. She writes, "What do you think when people tell you you're throwing your vote away when you don't vote Republican or Democrat?" Well, we both know about this because I know I voted for Gary Johnson last year. Did you vote last year at all?
Yeah, I voted for Castle.
Or not last year.
Last election.
Last election. You voted for Castle. I was thinking about voting for him, but I ended up voting for Johnson because I thought I was hoping he was reaching that threshold that where the Libertarian Party would actually have a chance for this election season.
Sure.
But of course he didn't. The one thing I would say is that 34% of registered voters are independent. That's a third, a little over a third. So you have a third of registered voters who say they aren't partisan particular. That doesn't necessarily mean that they won't vote for either or, but that's to say that they have no party allegiance to either or. Yeah. And so I think that's a big statistic that is thrown out a lot of election cycles, but isn't talked about a whole lot because we want to maintain this false dichotomy of Republican Democrat. So that's what I would say, is that don't let people mislead you and make you think that you're throwing your vote away, because one, they don't know who you're going to vote for originally out of the two, if you are at all. And then two is that more than a third of the voting base doesn't even like the two-party system.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason why they'd say you're throwing your vote away is because they can't win. But that also ends up making the purpose of democracy, of participation in democracy, in democratic processes, to only be worthwhile or legitimate if it can win. And of course, that's the entire, purpose of the political system at the moment. And and Jorgensen, frankly, has talked about this from a psychological perspective, because she has background in this, actually. And I'm not pushing for her, but she actually mentioned it herself, that it's very psychologically influential for people to actively be drawn to things like a political identity, in the sense that they win. They want to win. This is the entire push. People participate in these ways because they want to be winners. Right. But I don't see how, if this is truly supposed to be a free, if you're coming to me for my opinion, you're saying, participate in this democratic process, this element, and you're telling me, but you can't actually have your own opinion on it. You have to have one of these opinions. One of these binary opinions. How is it throwing my vote away to give an actual opinion of who I want? Right. You're telling me, who do you want? But only out of these two choices over here. You're completely delegitimizing my opinion. Yeah, it's like that. It's like that. That meme. I'm sure you saw it. The meme where the guy's like, "Man, look at that crazy guy. He's eating diarrhea," and then he's like eating like a big pile of poop. And the guy he's talking to is like, "You're eating poop," and he's like, "Yeah, but that guy's eating diarrhea. That's worse, And he's like, "But you're still eating." Anyways, so far, I think our biggest point is what Trump said, is that they won, so now everybody else has to suffer the consequences of that win. And I don't think it would be any different from the other side, other platform. Yeah. So I'm going to unpause this. We'll go ahead and we'll keep going, and then I'd be okay to skip ahead a tiny bit. I'm not sure if we even wanted to.
I like people that you have to speak. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. Mm-hmm. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. A lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening at some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. We're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks.
Like they can
do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost like being in
wife
prison.
Was just telling me,
and you look at what's going on with divorce.
Breaking,
look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's
basically
a very,
like
very
Trump
sad
was
thing.
And
he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well.
I don't think it's
setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
Cordial. Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, How well are you doing? This guy paid
Well,
a total of $750 in
wrong.
taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's
It's
just
the wrong
yeah,
statement.
I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in a way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. We are going to get to
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a
Can
statement.
you just go ahead?
So did you.
People want their schools.
I really
no,
don't
people
get
want their
how-
schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their.
Go ahead.
I really don't get how Biden comes into this. Again, his party and his progressive bent, they're not closing because COVID wiped their employees out. They are closing because of involuntary lockdowns that prevent economic activity from happening, from people freely choosing to economically associate with one another.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, you're telling me that we have to close the economies down, and then you have to pump in money just to keep them from those businesses from closing? That does not seem at all sustainable to me. It does seem very, it does seem like something progressive politicians would propose.
Right. Well, that's because they want, and that's the thing too with what
and
happened.
I mean, they did the entire What more stimulus? I guess they wanted more because, as far as I was aware, there was already too much stimulus. More stimulus than the 2008 recession, and that was a fully market-driven recession, not an environmental virological crisis at all. Right. This was a something endemic to the economy itself. Not even a temporary imposition of restrictions or whatever. It just seems so. Now, I mean, Trump will never be able to distill this on the debate because at this point, all they're trying to do is get digs in at each other. But this is the point, right? I don't get it. You're trying to say, here, let me break your leg, okay, as a government, and then say, oh, here, let me fix your leg for you. Aren't you so glad I'm here? What? No, you broke my leg in the first place. What were you doing?
Yeah. And I think that's the debate. The COVID debate in general is, shutting down the economy is just as dangerous as, well, I mean, that's the thing. I don't even know if it's just as dangerous with some of the stats that we have.
But it's a seen and unseen, right?
Right.
It's this sort of economic, tendency that many libertarians are familiar with. That we can do a lot of things and have a lot of intentions and propose a lot of solutions to seen problems. The problem is that if you look into it further, you understand that there are all these other unseen consequences to our actions. Right. But because they're unseen, they can hardly ever be addressed when you're talking about a political, sort of solution. And so we're saying that you can't possibly quantify the downstream negative impacts from an extreme imposition of completely closing off involuntarily, forcing people not to associate and socialize and trade and otherwise, carry on their business. You can't see it, but we're telling you it's there.
Right.
And you only ever see it with numbers, but because it's not flashy or because it's not scary, it would be very hard for people to understand it. But this is a well-established economic, occurrence.
Yeah, and one thing too that in the last segment, right before we paused, that Biden said, and I forgot to go to it, but where he said, "Fund what needs to be funded," and as if that's the plan. Like funding isn't necessarily a plan. I don't understand why people think that whenever somebody says, "Hey, we need to fund programs," that's still not a plan. You're not saying what programs. You're not laying out what individual programs we need to establish. You're just saying, "Hey, we need to fund them. We need to fund some type of program that helps out with this thing." That's not a plan.
No, it's kind of the mentality, right? Public schools just need more money. Just a money problem. Always a money problem. Just throw more money at it. It never helps.
Right.
Because obviously it's not a money problem. Now, frankly, he might be more right in this case, because at least if you're talking from an economic perspective or from a poverty perspective or something like that, if you don't have a job, then you might need to be funded.
Right.
But the idea that just throwing money at a problem, period, is going to help anything is obviously not the case. We all know that just because you get money does not give you the same benefits from a holistic perspective as earning your own money.
Right.
Very different implication.
Right. So let's go ahead and we'll keep it going here, because
that was too important not to address, and I really don't understand where they're coming from. And unfortunately, that sort of point will only be made after the fact and will probably never be seen by people who might agree with Biden. But
Right.
it has struck me every time they speak about it. So.
Right. All right. So we'll continue from where we kind of paused at here.
Yeah, go ahead.
State shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives.
People
They'll
want
be
to be
careful,
safe.
but they want their schools open.
People want
I'm
to
the
be
one that
safe.
brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And
All right,
people of
let's-
Ohio are very proud of me. And you know
We're
how
going
I
to get
found
back,
out? When he took
gentlemen.
a phony
We're going to
ad.
get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers.
Show us your tax
I paid
returns.
$38 million one year. I paid $27 million
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good. And I built
Sir,
a great
I'm asking
company.
you a specific question, which
But
is...
let me tell you.
I understand all of that.
Release your
I
tax
understand
return.
all of that.
But
No, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750?
Millions of dollars. And you'll get to see it.
I-
You'll get to
When?
see it. But let
In
me just
Shala?
tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people.
don't wanna
Like
pay
every
tax.
other private
That's
person, unless they're stupid,
Well, finally
they go
something
through
we can
the
agree on.
laws, and that's
I can
what it
agree
is.
on that.
He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build the building and we get tax credits, like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, that put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes on the money a school teacher makes is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts. and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it in the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator.
You're the worst president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it before when you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done. And you know what happened?
Yeah, you got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is busted.
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes, American people.
So we're clear.
But in Obama's, you talk about the.
Go ahead, make that point.
Oh, sorry. I don't recall us having a free market approach since Trump was in office.
Right.
That's just funny.
Get that thing straight. Yeah. I'll do like another pause break where we can talk.
No, go ahead.
The economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't
booming. He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
Is it fair to say he blew it when fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Excuse
me, Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
We did not.
Standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought back the automobile industry.
All right, let him back.
We brought back. I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, They're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having.
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch. Down
All right, gentlemen,
18%. China ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also,
Simply
while we're
not
at it,
true.
why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma
None
to
of
deserve
that is true.
$183,000?
None
You've
of
asked
that
your
is
question,
true.
let him answer.
None
if you're
of
playing
that is
bingo,
true.
those
Oh, really? He didn't
Totally,
get
No,
$3.5 million?
Mr. President,
it's
Mr.
totally,
President, please. You've
totally
asked the question.
discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
Well, wait, he didn't get
No, no.
$3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice,
He got
Mr.
$3.5 million.
President,
that is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr.
Oh,
President,
but, Mr.
it's an open discussion, please.
Now,
It's a fact.
Well,
There's- it
you
is
have
not a
raised an
fact.
issue. Let the
It's been
Vice
totally
President answer.
discredited.
Did
There was a
Burisma pay him
report.
$183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr.
Look,
President,
no
my
job.
son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he
and
did.
Mr.
the only
President,
guy that
let
did
him
something-
answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And
The media?
By everybody. Well, by the
By the
media,
media,
by our
because they refuse to
allies, by
talk
the
about it
World
because they're
Bank,
embarrassed.
by everyone has discredited. Matter
Dude,
of fact, even
Mr.
the
President,
people who
please stop.
testified under oath.
So let me
Under
ask you
oath.
this,
Under-
Joe.
under
No,
oath.
go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to
Even the
you.
people under.
He got $3.5
He
million from
testified-
Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I
really?
did it
I'd like to know
honorably.
who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list
I'll
of the
fire
people
them.
who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good
Because
job.
Some people don't
Well,
do a good
here's
job. With you,
Go
they
ahead.
say,
You get
here's
the,
the
wait a
deal.
minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me. This.
Hey,
this
let me just
person.
say, Joe.
No. I'm Mr. President.
$3.5
Mr.
million,
President.
Joe.
That is simply.
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million
It
from
did-
Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about
It's like
families.
Jerry Springer
and
in here or
ethics.
something. I
No,
don't know.
I don't want to
even
do
know
that. I mean,
what
his
we're talking
family
about
we
right
could
now.
talk about all night. His family's
My
already.
family,
No, let him go.
my family
already
lost
wrote
a fortune by
Okay.
coming down and helping
Go
us
ahead.
with
Go ahead,
government.
sir.
And that's
Every-
such a.
they're right
that's
here.
a-
Mr.
That's
President.
such
Every
a great.
single one of them lost
This
a
is not
fortune
about
by
President.
my
coming and
family or
helping
his
us with
family. It's
government.
about your family,
They
the
didn't
American
put $3.5
people.
million
He
dollars
doesn't.
in.
That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
you
here.
should
All right,
Not
that's the, end
about
of the,
here.
that's the end of the
Shouldn't have
segment.
taken the money.
We're moving on.
It didn't take them.
Well,
Vice
it's a very-
President,
but Chris,
no,
can I be honest? It's a very important
Try to be
question.
honest.
No,
He
I
stood
listen.
up.
No,
he stood up.
the answer to the
and
question
he
we all
is
are.
no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you don't
That
get rid of
is
the
If you're- you know what, you're-
absolutely
his
not
mic.
true.
Tape
You're-
doing it.
you're gonna
It's on
have-
tape.
Poor
True.
Chris
Gentlemen.
Wallace.
I hate to raise
Chris,
my voice,
he's
but
on
it seems
tape.
to be, why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal. We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more
Well,
interrupting
that's
than
all right, but he does plenty.
well, less than sir,
he
less
does
than
plenty.
no,
Yes,
less than you have. Let's
You've been
please
doing more.
continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president's ever said anything like that.
It is who's
second,
sir.
Second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African-American community.
So,
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
he did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left. And they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right.
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place, and you say peaceful protest?
President Trump,
No, it's
I'm not
not,
asking.
but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue raised. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment.
And frankly, I can
This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end.
Go for it.
I tell you, I can guarantee you that many people in the Black Lives Matter, or even people who are, just somewhat informed on this sort of issue, it's obvious Biden's not exact. I mean, his exact, phrasing of, the police are, the vast majority of police are great, decent folk, and there's just a couple bad apples. I mean, this is exactly what Trump supporters say.
Yeah.
In response to some of these things. It's very interesting for me to hear him say that. I guess it doesn't surprise me. Again, it doesn't exactly make me think that he has taken on any sort of remorse or reconsideration of the sort of policies he's enacted in the past.
Right. No. Yeah. Because I don't think I heard him respond to any of those accusations about.
Of course not. What did he say, right?
Well, right. Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah. That was a good chance. I don't think he's going to get another chance.
No.
I don't think it's gonna help him. Now, I mean, I guess good on him if that's the way he really feels. And even though he would have pressure to be more extreme than that if he's not, I mean, I appreciate his if that's actually his opinion, his actual comments on that. It does lead me to think that we shouldn't expect to see much different results in the criminal justice reform if it were coming from the president, right, or either candidate. I'm not sure if I see that happening. So
right, but you were saying that what Trump was saying that Biden had said, he didn't say it. Is that what you were saying?
No, you're right. I mean, he's saying he brought up his record, point blank, and his response to that would have been the right time to say anything about it, to repaint it or reframe it or reconsider it. He didn't.
Yeah, he didn't.
And I don't think he's going to get another chance.
Yeah, he pushed it on to bad apples, which, like you were saying, is the same rhetoric that the.
Yeah, but those bad apples only have some of the power they do because of your policies. So,
exactly.
And this is kind of the thing we say about government as well, right? I could say the same thing about government employees. Oh, the vast majority of them are great people and or soldiers or anything like that, right? But then they have just these bad apples. Well, when you give people power and then you have the bad apples, it means the bad apples can use the power. Mm-hmm. So if you want to limit the amount of influence bad apples have in any sphere of influence, be it police or military or, I don't know, forest conservation, I don't know, any area, don't give them power.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's continue on here.
Racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else.
Radical,
and he would know.
What is radical totally about racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and frankly very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people
Tell us what
that
that
our
is,
country
Trump.
is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm
No
not going to
one
allow
did.
that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's
Oh,
the racist.
You just don't.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about
You
this
don't
than
know.
he does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important to people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
I'm going to skip to where it's live right now.
Racism.
Dangerous,
All right,
radical
gentlemen,
group.
we're now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you ought to be
Biden
careful with
records.
them. They'll overthrow you.
When a
Hey,
president,
this is
I'm
a good
going to
one.
ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. It was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president. You can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent.
How?
When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused the recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3.5 million.
And by the way, my son...
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and Why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word. Can you add
No,
back
no,
He's
I'm
a
not
person
asking.
that's
That
not
was a
yelling.
rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes, you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son
got my bingo.
was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot. And the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking
like
about
hell.
Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm
Hunter?
talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter
you know
got
Bo.
thrown. Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He
for
wasn't dishonorably.
cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. Once you
None of
became
that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made a
son,
fortune.
my son,
And he didn't have a job.
my son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he
I'm proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All
of
right.
dollars?
But he wasn't given
All right.
tens of
He
millions
was
of
given
dollars. That
tens
is
of
totally,
millions of
that's
dollars.
been totally discredited.
We've already been We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
Gets $3.5 million
Okay,
from the
Let's
mayor
talk about
of Moscow.
Let's talk
That is
about
not true.
Gentlemen,
That report is totally
Why did he get
discredited.
it?
I
Mitt
think,
Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written
That
for
dude's gonna
political
walk
reasons.
you know,
out.
I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have
do with climate
displaced
change, Chris. So why are we
hundreds
talking
of
about
thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change? And what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful, clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you
You've got to have
believe?
cuts.
What do you believe about the
gender
science
reveal.
of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion
Master
Tree Project,
politician.
and it's very
Do you
exciting
believe
for a lot of people.
that human
Won't answer.
pollution,
the question.
greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of
I
this
think
planet?
a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground.
But, sir,
That's burning down because of a lack of
But,
management.
sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, Why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars
Well,
and
not
trucks?
really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they've simply ignored
No, but you would take a lot of cars
rollback.
off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And, and I'm okay with electric cars, too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that, in fact, is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that, well, the fact that it's all true. And here's the deal.
About the Green Deal, and it's not for $20 billion, as you said.
It's interesting that it's for one, it's obvious neither of these people actually understand any of the arguments that like climate change people would have. But it's funny because they mentioned methane emissions, and if you do that around an actual person who is like familiar with the science, listen, I don't know if it's settled as far as like as far as a small topic in the broader discussion, right? But I've heard it mentioned about methane emissions. Primarily, that's livestock. Typically, is Yeah, exactly, Lee. Here in the comments here. So I've heard it certainly mentioned, okay, methane, the highest percentage of methane emission comes from cows.
Cows, yeah, cattle.
In fact, or livestock, and cows being one of the primary contributors. However, if you talk to people who consider themselves really into the science and climate change, it's small. It's like pocket change compared to carbon dioxide emissions, is what they'll claim.
Right.
So let's just be clear. Biden is obviously not someone who deeply understands this science. I don't generally think that's something. It could be something that might get you political points, but I don't feel like a climate scientist would consider
methane like a really
to be all that important of a sign. And as well, I've heard, okay, if you really wanted to like spend some money and reverse climate change, you would focus on aquaculture, because the sort of life cycles of I don't know, that kind of that real small sea life
Right.
basically can absorb a lot of, and the water itself can absorb a lot of heat and help balance the CO2 levels and the overall heat environment of the overall conditions there, and as well, I mean, it ranges from that to replanting the Sahara Desert, because such a huge swath of area is generally slowly and gradually deforested at the fringes by subsistence farmers and things like that have to, they have to live on that because that's all they can cook on, But at the same time, their actions continue to make that desert larger. And of course, if you can imagine that entire thing being, covered with forest, imagine the sort of CO2, sink that would contribute. I mean, anyway, it's always interesting to me.
Yeah.
When I tweeted, I think I'm getting the idea that President Trump thinks we need forest management.
Yeah.
It just seems like
He
he's
mentioned it.
he's really interested in that.
He
has
is,
a company
but
lined up.
he's not wrong about it, from
No.
what I understand.
No, he's right. I just don't see why that's the only thing you're going to talk about. It's not the only aspect that you can talk to.
Right. Well, I think his
politician.
Yeah. I think his point though is that is that you can't just look at California really as far as a climate change issue, because it has to deal mostly with bad forest management and man-made causes too. Because I mean, from what I understand, that whole fire started because of a gender reveal party, or at least that was one of the causes for one of the fires there. And so most of the fires that happen in California are caused by man, not by some kind of overheating or natural,
or at least initiated by
initiated. Yeah, but the thing is, it spreads and it grows because of the bad forest management there. They don't
becomes
do
an
a whole lot
actual
of
problem in those.
Yeah, because they don't do a whole lot of controlled burns. Where we live at, there's a park down the road. They do a controlled burn 2 or 3 times a year. Maybe more, but like
because they got good forest management down there.
Right, they got good forest management down here.
It's just silly. I mean, it's generally speaking, if either of us were on this debate floor, we would probably have more to offer than these guys do half the time. I mean, the simple answer for him to respond to, why would you back out of this, Paris Accord or Kyoto before that, or why would you roll back these things? Simply answered. Because I don't believe the solutions they're advocating for will make any difference. That's all you have to say. You can even say, yes, I believe that human factors have contributed to climate change, but I don't think the solutions they're offering are sustainable. That's all you have to say. Now, maybe you have some talking points to that, but you don't just ramble on about forest management or anything like that. You say, I don't think those are applicable, or I don't think they're, just like the sort of things that have been done to combat COVID spread have other unforeseen consequences. So do extreme carbon limitations, or the sort of, policy solutions that are offered up in these accords, right?
Right.
He could have gotten a lot of points to say that America is actually already past their peak oil point and are trending down, while other countries that are developing, like India or China, are the ones who are actually producing, the bulk of that additional CO2, volume, and could have won plenty of points for his base. And he would have been somewhat correct in the sense that, sure, we can do a lot of things, but frankly, the American culture is already kind of ingrained in the sort of green alternatives and that sort of thing. And you're going to get much better results long term and much more sustainable and economically feasible results long term if you impact the culture enough to take it on themselves, to personally decide, I want to find greener solutions, more sustainable solutions and practices, and support them with my money versus a top-down, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Because because it's 10:30 now.
But I want to see it a little bit. If
I want to see how this
more left.
Yeah, I'll go back to live here.
They were a disgrace to our country, and we've caught them.
And then we'll kind of go back to...
We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense, and President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that,
sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump.
It's a rigged election.
You're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so, because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them. We don't like them. We don't like them.
But what are you going to do about it? There are millions of ballots going out right now.
What you do is you go and vote. You do a solicited ballot, and that's okay.
I know you about missing ballots. What do you go vote? That millions of people.
You go and vote. You go and vote
like they
used to in the old
millions of people.
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well. This is not going to end well.
5 states have had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because
you're wrong. You're wrong.
I want to continue with you on this, Vice President Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement like that.
Excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable number, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this, because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, Chris, when you have 80 million ballots,
gentlemen, I have a final
Senate
question.
and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already there's been
so
fraud.
now,
mail service delivers
wait a minute, gentlemen. Final question is, in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until Election Day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what,
does that
from
mean,
a common sense,
does that mean you're going to tell your people to take to the street?
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
you think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. They count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots, that somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established. Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
You had an opportunity to respond.
Look at Carolyn Maloney.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to see an honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're going to leave it there. To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah In Salt Lake City, the two vice presidential nominees, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night. We hope you watch. Until then, thank you and good night. Thank you.
Man. I doubt anything of substance is going to happen, but we'll just leave it on the screen like this.
Sure.
So I've got like 3 pages of stuff that I didn't really go into.
Well,
yeah. And it's just like little notes. It's not like a whole lot really.
Yeah, sure.
I wrote income taxes because I think if people didn't put such a priority on income taxes and what the presidents are paying in taxes, because really all it is like, well, who's giving back more to the state, but it's like, why is that a measure of who would be a better president? I don't understand.
No, it's not. They want to dean information from it. So basically, how much are your charitable contributions, right? I mean, they're looking for weapons.
Yeah.
In those cases, really.
Yeah, but for me and for you, probably how much you paid on income taxes doesn't matter, And I think the fact that he paid the least, and he said, I use the system to my advantage. It's like that's a good thing, for us, and we would like to see it for more Americans. So I don't understand why it's such a bad thing for the president to not have paid a ton in taxes.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the reason is, of course, because we understand that those who are business owners, especially those people in real estate, they have certainly gained themselves different tax loopholes. I mean, some of which make complete sense given the business they're in and that sort of thing. But specifically, real estate is rife with plenty of ways. You could call them tax loopholes, but really they're just tax incentives that are offered to them for various reasons. And obviously him being in real estate means that he's probably very able to exploit them. I mean, yeah, sure. And the reason why he would mention, say, teachers paying more income tax, I mean, or you and I paying more income tax, because we actually have W-2 income.
Yeah,
W-2 income is one of the worst types of income to be able to have, with its withholding and the rates. There's not many options given to you to take additional deductions and that sort of thing.
Right.
I mean, what I would assume we would want to say is, what is your business record? How many employees do you have? How many, what sort of foundations do you run? What sort of initiatives do you have within your company? I assume that would be much more productive and insightful questions and financial related insights into someone's character and conduct than a simple number of how much
you paid in income taxes,
how much your tax withholding was.
Exactly. Yeah.
Federal tax.
So really the only actual plan that I think I heard about, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but was Biden's tax plan. That was like the only thing I heard any kind of detailed,
or like a number on.
Anything. Because and what he said was he was going to increase the corporate tax from 21% to 28%.
Yeah.
Again, that's the only plan.
I'm fairly sure 21 still the highest in the
right.
world.
Yeah.
So just make it a little bit higher.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When they start talking about manufacturing jobs, really, I really didn't get anything out of that conversation. Because they both kind of said, you were horrible for the manufacturing job. No, you were. And then it was like,
no, I want the steel belt Democrats. No, I want the steel belt Democrats is what that was.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing new about that.
I had to forward past the race issues because I felt like neither one of them, I saw some of your tweets, and I just felt like neither one of them answered the question reasonably or to any level of satisfactory,
Yeah, certainly neither of them offered any solution that either of us would be interested in. So
Right. Now, what do you think about the question that Chris Wallace asked Trump about the racial sensitivity training? Because he cut that funding for those racial training, but they were teaching critical race theory. Me and my last guest, we talked about that last week about critical race theory. I don't know how much you know about it, but what do you think about that? I'm sure you think any funding cut from any programs is good.
yeah, I guess so. I get a little confused between where they would be like banning certain content versus cutting funding for it. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, well, what do you think about cutting, foreign aid? Well, I don't think that tax money should go to that at all. I don't know. In a sense, there's like nothing inherently problematic with it, but obviously I don't want it. I guess I wouldn't want to support it exactly.
Right.
I mean, there's obviously a difference between racial sensitivity training and critical race theory. I mean, it's not like they're actually related, though for whatever reason, in this case, they are being talked about together.
Talked about as if they're the same thing. That was kind of my point.
Or just together, right? In the same program or something.
Right. Because that's the thing is, I think what's going to happen is people are going to misconstrue racial sensitivity training with the critical race theory, because they aren't, like what you're saying, they're not the same thing.
Well, they do all the time, right? So, I mean, I'm saying, 80-20 rule applies here as well. So if you look at all the people who might show solidarity with, say, Black Lives Matter or something, I would assume 20% of them actually represent perhaps what the organization, at like the founder level or something.
Right.
In that extreme example that people like to demonize them as taking on. So immediately upon saying, using like a Black Lives Matter slogan or something like that, they say, they're just a bunch of communists or something like that. And it loses all of it when 80% of the people who are interested in that at all have no tie to that. They don't have any interest in that sort of thing, right? And so it's just a super generalization and a way to completely demonize a concept that most people don't want to have to grapple with, for just political expediation, I guess. I don't know. I think I wandered off slightly from I was trying to make sure I knew where I was going there, but you can tell it kind of happens in the debate as well there, right?
Yeah. The reason I brought it up is because I think that critical race theory isn't really a great theory because it separates people into these two classes of oppressor and oppressed, and I don't think that should be taught at any organizational level, and definitely I don't think it needs to be taught in a governmental level, because then let's say you have a governmental employee who is someone of color and they see somebody who's white, a white cis male, they're going to say, well, that you're part of the oppressor class, so you're not going to get any kind of benefits from government or anything like that. That's why I'm kind of like, I was for him pulling funding from that.
Well, I don't really get that. So you're saying from like, were they doing that in federal workplaces?
They were doing that in federal workplaces.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But the reason I say it is because everybody's making a huge deal about it. They talked about it on the debate stage. Everybody's making a huge deal because because Trump cut the funding to that, or he banned that those kind of courses or anything like that. And it's because they were teaching critical race theory, not necessarily racial sensitivity.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but anyways,
I guess I'd have to go in there and see that actual curriculum, right? I mean, probably a smart idea. But again, the unfortunate side effect of that again is that making of that synonymous, right? So between saying, well, okay, because I mean, listen, these HR sort of place, they have all sorts of programs that they will have about all sorts of topics that aren't race related, but that would otherwise be contentious at all. and you wouldn't want to throw out anything that they were doing that was positive, just because it also had these other elements. So one would think it'd be easy, that you might want to try to keep the good and the bad.
Right.
And, I don't know. I'm sure it was a somewhat political move for him as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, so what did you think about what Trump was talking about with the appellate judges? He said, he put in, or at the end of his term, his first term, he will have put in over 300 federal appellate judges. I'm wondering, because it was brought to me Sunday night by a friend of mine that the Obama administration left about 128 openings in the appellate court, and that left room for Trump to come in and bring those in. What's the significance of that?
Well, he was talking about that in regards to his record, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't exactly know what his point was, other than the fact that presumably if you, I mean, again, this is counterintuitive, right? But is kind of a signal of the sad state of things. The idea would be that a lot of his supporters would view the federal justice system as something that was highly politicized. So if he was able to put people in there, and I don't, obviously, all those positions don't have, life terms or anything like that, like the Supreme Court would, and yet they are probably insulated from, political pressure, like from an electoral pressure, that sort of thing. So obviously anything that he can fill means that no one else can, and
right.
if he, fills those positions with judges who would agree with him or his supporters, then, that would be a positive signal, for his supporters or something, that he has the people in there. I don't exactly know what it means, what positive aspect it would bring to say that I, created all these positions or something,
yeah,
or filled in all these jobs. Didn't seem super relevant to me.
Right.
Other than he did follow it up again with, 3 Supreme Court justices, in that same term. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, why would you bring it up if you didn't think it was part of your record? It seems as though there's some sort of political insinuation there, right? So
right.
I'm putting in people who are, like me, and I don't know. If it's anything that struck me from so far from these debates, I mean, Trump, neither of them really seemed to, I think, act like they were representing some sort of cohesive base of a party, right? That they have some sort of, agreed upon platform and principle and ideas behind it. It was all mismatched. But if it's anything that comes across to me, I don't hear conservative being used, right? I don't hear. I did not. For instance, I bet the debate next week from Pence will be much more of that, right? But in the past, you think Romney or Bush, these people were, during the Tea Party era, right? They were using these to signal that, we're conservative. They're conservative principles. They're these sorts of things. I didn't hear him say that once. It seems to me like it is the personality, presidency.
Right.
Case. So if you are for that person and you just support him, then you got your guy. But I didn't hear. So basically, I don't see why a conservative would align themselves with him necessarily. Apart from that, they have no alternative, or they don't feel like they have any alternative. That did not come out in that debate at all.
Yeah. What are some of your? You kind of already explained some of them, but what are some of your other final thoughts on this debate?
Yeah, well, I mean, I tweeted on there, so they were talking about these mail-in ballots and that sort of thing. I get that obviously, voting is a sensitive thing in terms of like that you would think you need, special oversight or precautions about it or whatever. Obviously, there's a lot of power involved in the process, but I don't understand how we can do absolutely everything by applying technology to it, right? We can do all these great things. But no, you got to mail people ballots. I mean, it's not like they have any other way to communicate their preference via, maybe something that completely ties them to the rest of the world, and with encryption and digital signatures, and no, we can't possibly do that.
Yeah, I like how people. I like how, because I've had this conversation a few times, but I like how people put like they're totally willing to pay their bills, use their social security number and everything like that through their phone, but they're unwilling to vote through their phone.
Yeah, or in this case, we're just saying apply technology to it, right? So if it's phone, email, whatever. I mean, why in the world are we mailing ballots and having to come out of our head? And for that matter, I've thought about this a lot. Obviously, we would consider the American system to be a representative democracy, right? So if you paid attention in your civics class, there are direct democracies and representative democracies. Obviously, it's been considered that, in larger populations, you have to have representative democracy because it would be impossible to ask everyone their opinion every time that you had to make a vote on something in a democratic government. I don't see how that's true anymore.
Right.
That is not true. If you can put a Twitter poll on here to get through your vote, you can't possibly tell me that you can't poll your constituents, even just from an opinion perspective, right?
Yeah.
You can't tell me that you can't get direct democratic opinions at 24 hours a day, even just from a referendum sort of perspective.
Yeah. What do you think about this comment here? It says vote through phone or email is insane and has no accountability.
I don't see how. People are saying that voting in many of the same ways that they're trying to do now is without accountability, that you can forge a signature, or that you can show up twice, or anything like this.
Or mail in 2 ballots, or people are getting mailed 2 ballots right now. And
at any rate, even if the solutions you had today were that way, I think it's nonsensical to think that if the solution were to be worked toward, to find, okay, how do we signify, a one person to a vote in a digital format, in a technological way, right? I mean, if you're looking at things like cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, and that sort of thing, I mean, again, how is it that fundamentally different, really, than paying someone over the phone?
Right.
Or again, digital signatures that we do for mortgages or insurance policies or any sort of legally binding things like that. I can't imagine that there can't be a technological solution to that.
Yeah.
That can be arrived at. So
yeah. That's the thing for me.
I'm not saying that you have the solution, the platform today.
Yeah.
But
it can be developed. It can be developed.
I would assume so.
Yeah, it can be developed, and then the point was brought up about VPNs. But the thing is, it's like if you had some kind of verification system where you had to verify it 2 or 3 times over digitally, a lot of those platforms already exist with banking and and everything like that. And so, again, like you were saying, like the solution may not be out there right now, but it's somewhere out there. It's somewhere out there.
Yeah, you could if you wanted to. I mean, for that matter, it generally, if anything else, as well, reveals the absurdity of 330 million people being in one political unit to begin with. So, I mean, it's nice to think about, the United States, we have to come together and do all this. Americans don't want to be together. They don't want to be together. And now I do think, there's sort of an addiction to the political drama that happens all the time. People probably wouldn't want to admit it. I think a lot of people would miss it if they, all of a sudden did not have it in their life. But the idea that even in a representative democracy, you're going to, I mean, it does not reflect the plan of the founders at all.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're attacking it from that tack to say, it's an American system, it's an American tradition, or it somehow represents some purer version of politics of the past. This is not what they designed. So the idea that it should work well is silly. The idea that you're going to possibly make everyone happy or possibly continue on with, peaceable coexistence. When, as Bastiat likes to, tell, when you begin to give people favors of different parties in a democratic sort of system, then inevitably it will evolve into the people in power giving themselves advantages, the people who are disadvantaged taking power and giving themselves back advantages and punishing the people that punished them before. And you see it in all sorts of other countries that have tried to democracy. Thankfully, it hasn't happened quite as much here, but it obviously is starting to.
Right.
From what we can see. And if people don't want to be politically associated, then to keep them politically associated like that is unjust.
Mm-hmm.
Let them go.
Yeah.
Let us go.
Yeah. Truth. So here's kind of my final thoughts, and you can chime in if you feel like it. I thought Biden actually handled himself better than I thought he was going to. He didn't trail off as much. I thought a lot of what he said was probably scripted, so he probably rehearsed it a lot. Because one thing I noticed is that he would look up and off to the camera. I don't think he had something up there that he could read, but you can tell that he had a memorized script of some sort for some of his points. But I still thought he handled himself well, better than I thought he was. Is really what I was trying to say. I thought Trump was very belittling and very rude, and actually, the way that he treated the entire process, not just he treated Biden bad, but he treated Chris Wallace bad, and it made me really not want to listen to him. Like I was like, I really don't want to listen to you, Trump, because you won't even let you. It's almost as if he couldn't let himself be put under the scrutiny of the opposition in a clear format, or else he would be found out. That's the way it felt.
Yeah, I mean, I did not sense any inherent bias or aggressiveness or anything like that from the moderator, except for what seemed to be brought out of him, by the behavior or anything like that. But I understand that in years past, there were certainly cases where it seemed like, it's pretty clear that the moderator had a preference or something.
Right.
I don't think you were going to get that from a Fox News correspondent. I mean, it's not as though I think of Fox News as some kind of, state Republican news agency or something like that.
Right.
But at the very least, I kind of expect them to have an air of trying to be respectful of that.
Yeah.
And frankly, what were you going to lose there? Because, I mean, he was still friendly half the time. And my goodness, he would not let the moderator talk. I'm not saying he alone didn't. They both got rambly.
They both did, but I feel like Biden didn't as much. I feel like Biden, when he did it,
he was willing to back down if he got.
He was willing to back down, but he also didn't. He also didn't give it unless it was given. His was almost retaliatorial, where Trump's was just. It was always aggressive. Like he was always the aggressor. And this. Chris Marengo, he said, feels like Chris Wallace was beginning to feed Joe the answers. I didn't feel that way. I felt Joe Biden's answers were his own, or at least his platforms or whatever.
Didn't really get any of that. No.
Yeah, the way that I felt though was what we're talking about now, which is why I bring it up. Is that I felt like Chris Wallace was kind of like, well, at least Joe Biden is willing to work within the parameters of this debate, so I'm going to direct my questions more kinder toward him. That's the way I felt toward the end.
I guess if you go into an arena like that expecting people to be against you or something. I mean, I think there's a certain class of people who just expect to see opposition everywhere.
Right.
And if part of your shtick is that I'm the guy the media doesn't want you to like.
Yeah.
I mean. I'm not saying he's necessarily wrong when it comes to primetime pundits on obviously not agreeable networks or something like that. But this was not that situation,
right?
And eventually, if you continue to do that, it doesn't have that same sort of 2016. Firebrand sort of attitude, right? It comes across as kind of paranoid.
Yeah.
And so I don't think any of his supporters will see that in him. But for those of us who aren't really, who don't really care either way, it's going to start to see, to seem, a bit paranoid and overblown.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of echo your sentiment as well. That like my confidence in the knowledge base of either side definitely was not increased.
Would you agree? Like, it really seemed like, and this could just be completely, my bad memories or something like that, but it really seemed like in the, let's say, the Romney and Obama debate sort of, arena, right? It seemed like they were a bit more wonkish. So they were talking about, my plan is going to do this many more jobs and has this much, cost. And it was it was at least, 50% more mathematical and structured,
yes,
and laid out, more explicit and more organized.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem like that was there one time, not once. I feel like they were actually proposing anything that they had come up with ahead of time.
Right. Well, and that's what I was saying. Like the only plan of any sort that I felt like was laid out was that tax plan that Biden, and he only said like one point of it, which was I'm going to raise the corporate tax from 21 to 28. That was the only thing that remotely sounded like a plan or an idea from either side. Trump definitely didn't. Trump's biggest weapon that he had was, I'm going to make Joe Biden look like he's yesterday's news, and he had so many opportunities to do so within the government. And I think he thought that was going to be a big plan and that it was going to work in his advantage, but it turned out not to because he didn't take the opportunity to present anything meaningful either.
Yeah. But I mean, I expect that that Biden was probably coached to, you can't look like you're a pushover.
Yeah.
And I mean, unfortunately, that's going to end up getting him in trouble. I would have liked him to be a little more, quiet than he was even. But I don't know. I mean, since Kennedy and Nixon, these televised debates have been a lot of perception.
Yeah.
And never that much about substance, but it did seem like they had a little more substance to offer in past election cycles. And I'm not saying it's everyone, but it seems like the last, ones that I was kind of keyed into, or, the ones I've seen in the past, they were a little more, they were less like this, where it just seems like ad hoc and extemporaneous, and these people just, responding to each other and stuff. I don't know. I mean, definitely for those of us who enjoy, theology debates or something, like these were not William Lane Craig's up here, or, these guys, they have no.
It definitely didn't instill confidence in either candidate for me. I mean, I don't think, and again, whenever they did propose anything, which when I mean I mean literally Biden, a lot of his stuff was just very generalized, like when he was talking about the environment and he says, we have to move to renewable sources. And it's kind of like, well, what? What renewable sources? Renewable energy sources. What? Like just anything, he didn't really have a plan. That's, he just kind of.
And I had tweeted even there before, he was talking about, and we're going to do all these things and these programs, and we're going to make sure that they're about Buy American, that they're going to have to be all done in America. I said, wow, Trump's even making Democrats protectionist. Because I don't know if they would have, said that in the past, right?
Right.
Not arguing for or against the
they would have been
merits of that sort of program, but I mean,
they would have been more about the global economy.
Yeah, it's and you could tell, and again, because when they were talking about, no, I brought back manufacturing, no, I'm bringing back manufacturing, and the robots are all saying, no, I have manufacturing,
Yeah.
It seems kind of clear, like this is kind of, Biden is obviously coming up through that period of that cowboy and blue collar Democrat party of Clinton. So he's going there till I'm gonna protect your jobs, and then he's gonna get elected and sign NAFTA and completely get rid of all their manufacturing jobs to other countries. But it seemed that way, right? They just say, no. We're talking about Northern Democrats, Catholic Democrats, right, and blue collar steel belt type Democrats. He wants Pennsylvania, and Ohio. So yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just
Yeah. I think fact checkers are going to have a heck of a time.
Well, yes, but what facts were presented that they can check?
I don't know.
I mean,
they're going to try to do something with it.
I mean, every time they talked about 200,000 dead for COVID, I was thinking, don't send COVID patients into nursing homes, and there's about 80,000 of them or something, off the top.
Yeah.
As much, I'm not saying I want to support Trump through those things, but he didn't make those things happen as far as I know.
Right.
And so I don't get the, it seems all about, it felt like, very much like, social media political arguments, right? At that level, that kind of lay level where you're just defending you're not defending policies, you're defending a worldview.
Right.
And not very well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they both were. They represent a particular worldview. I don't know how well Biden represents his, anyone in particular, but obviously they don't represent, with all the divisiveness even within those parties, neither of them represent the entirety of their party, but they both represent a worldview, and they were both just arguing for whether they were right or not. But I got to say, I mean, Biden did not seem progressive. I imagine Kamala Harris is going to do much more to do that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where they'll want to look at for that. But I don't think you're going to get that from Biden. He seemed even more moderate than Obama from anything that I remember, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was all very, milquetoast from a Democrat perspective. I don't imagine left Democrats will be happy about, his.
I don't think they will be. I actually saw a few tweets from Democratic leaders, and they said that, especially during the race thing, which I knew that a lot of the left really wanted him to talk about race, and he didn't do very well with them. They weren't very happy with some of his responses on that. But I think that's one of the big issues that a lot of the left had with Biden to begin with
before he was nominated. Yeah.
Before he was nominated, yeah. But now it's like you're riding with Biden. You vote blue no matter who, and that's what you're going to get. Some, like you said, somebody who's more trying to defend American jobs, than Trump is or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. That might spell a if he is elected or something, and otherwise that kind of like more moderate head prevails. I'm not saying that would necessarily be a bad outcome,
right?
But it's really up in the air,
Right.
It's not a Ron Paul or something like that you're getting in here.
It's not. It's
in particular.
Yeah, it feels really a lot like you're not really getting a dichotomy of ideas. They're really just kind of the same ideas, just from different perspectives.
Yeah.
All right, man. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Just stick around for like 5 seconds afterward, and I'm going to do my end spiel here. So do you want to plug your stuff again?
Well, sure, if you like. So as Matt said, I'm the editor-in-chief, I suppose, chief of staff, founder, CEO of No King But Christ. We're on Facebook here. I'm sure that's linked to around, but just do a simple search, you'll find it. On Twitter earlier, Facebook, the blog is nokingbutchrist.org. The YouTube is youtube.com/nokingbutchrist. I'll be around all week. If you're a Christian or a libertarian, I think you'll be at home there, more or less. So,
all right, man. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in while we watch this live debate. I hope everyone got something out of this. It was kind of hard to keep track just because it felt so chaotic. But again, I hope everybody enjoyed our live coverage of the first presidential debate. I still got you live here. Boom. There we go. So you can rewatch this stream on YouTube. The link is in the bio of my Facebook page. You can also listen to my podcast available on Google Podcast and Apple Podcast. This episode will probably be released next week, not today. I usually try to release them like right afterward. But I hope to see you next week, next time, as we explore more Matt News.